For some gardeners, after their plants and flowers have gone to seed, they step in to take over where Mother Nature left off. We'll talk about saving and replanting seeds on this edition of Great Gardening straight ahead.
Every tree has a moment when it shines.
That's called moneywort or creeping Jenny.
You can go in and do a rejuvenating pruning.
Forage and feed for our native pollinator population.
A garden really gives you peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. Seeds can be exchanged, they can be purchased, but they can also be gathered and treated properly, replanted with success. Our resident experts are here to tell us more about that, and as always, to give great gardening advice on a whole host of topics. They are Tom Casper, a local garden professional, and Bob Olin, an area horticulturist and educator. Welcome back. You guys both have had some success with seeding and replanting.
We know a little bit about reseeding, don't we, Tom?
Yes.
Not that kind of reseeding.
Oh, not that reseeding. Oh,
Reseeding
well.
seeds, not reseeding hairlines.
Don't say it.
We never give up. My experience this year with an early season carrot crop was one that germinated, fried down, and had to reseed the entire block, which was a fairly substantial amount. So we all go through that, doing a little reseeding, sure.
And it certainly is fun to do, and kids love doing it as well, collecting those seeds.
Collecting and reseeding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have good luck with it, so we'll talk more about that. And we also want to welcome our phone volunteers, the Carleton County Master Gardeners, and give a big thank you to them for coming in tonight. Please give them a call at the numbers there on your screen. We have a local number and a toll-free number, and we'll get your questions to Bob and Tom for some valuable responses. Well, speaking of questions, we have one that came in with some photos. And we got this one from our own Judy Morrissey. Take a look at this. It's great pictures of an unfortunate condition, something that happened with her delphiniums.
Obviously, there's larvae, very large size. It's probably a moth larvae. And all I'll say is that you're helping to propagate the moth species there because it needs something to eat. Didn't do much for the delphinium. We've got some biologics that could be used there. I think if you used BT Kerstaki, gotta be real careful, not the one for controlling Colorado potato beetle or mosquitoes, but the one for controlling moths and butterfly larvae. So in this case, I think that would be a good control option. BT Kerstaki early before they do too much damage.
Or and as Judy had mentioned, picking them off by hand, because as Bob mentioned, the BT also has an impact on butterfly larvae as well. So the difficulty is that chemical or biological control doesn't distinguish between the larvae that we want there or the butterflies that we want there and then the other things. So in a case like that, it might be just best to take the time, even if it takes a little while, to remove them by hand. So.
And you just spray it on the larvae that you'd want to eliminate, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks for those pictures, Judy. We have some more questions that came in various ways via email and some leftovers from last week. So let's start with this one. Joe from Ashland has a sunny area on the west side of the garage and would like to create a natural garden with some milkweed and native plants for pollinators and monarchs. That was a parking space, though. It's got compacted soil and gravel, so he's wondering about raised beds. Would that work there?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a good use of raised beds. Build them up. We talked about that in another show. Don't have to worry too much now about the preserved lumber. And if we're thinking sustainably, rather than using some of the exotics, the redwoods or the cedars, just using a properly treated pine will do the job. Good drainage, I think, is the big thing, particularly for the milkweed, which we're interested in for the monarch populations.
Yeah.
And is there any depth that has to be?
It should probably be at least a foot. And it's a great sort of model, I think, for all of us to follow. Oftentimes, folks will just skin the surface of the soil off and try to seed or plant on top of that and end up laboring for years and years with poor soil conditions and end up eventually having to redo it. So doing it now building those raised beds and getting good soil and getting it off to a good start will pay dividends for years. So.
And before he puts that new soil down, let's get a tiller down there. Let's break up that area. Even though it's not quality, we want drainage there. So till the bottom and then fill your bins.
You know, last week we talked about lawn care and grasses, and Scott from South Superior is wondering, is there a good fertilizer for grass in the shade?
You know, it doesn't make too much difference. The big thing is getting the right seed for the shade. And the more sun, the more vigorous the growth, the more fertility is required. So really, a lot of the shade-loving grass species, I'm thinking about the chewing and the red and the short fescues, don't require a lot of fertility. That's one of their advantages. So I think getting the right seed, and creeping or red fescues is what you're after, and then let's not worry so much about the amount of fertility that's added there.
Mm-hmm. Another lawn question, Bob from Grand Rapids wants to know, how important is it to keep ants out of your lawn? He's got some bare spots and is thinking maybe those are from ants.
Well, ants are generally an insect that's taking advantage of something going on in your garden. So depending on if you don't, often folks won't mind them and they're fine. They're not going to do a significant amount of damage in most cases. But certainly, if he's concerned about it, there are treatments to get rid of them that are pretty effective and low impact on other insects around him. So.
And more than likely, the bare spots are not going to be caused by ants unless he's actually seeing a hill there. So he could have chinch bug. More than likely, he's got some dollar spot or other fungal disease that's causing the bare spots. So the ants get a lot of credit for damage they don't actually do.
All right. Karen from Duluth wants to know, can I use a black tube to protect the tree trunk? Formerly had a white one on there, and can that be left on all year?
Sure, she can use black tube. They're as interchangeable as the white ones are, but she does want to remove them every year. You get buildup of fungus and problems with them, so removing them is best, unless she's has issues with folks getting too close to them with weed whackers or lawn mowers, things like that. So.
And what time of year? Is there a particular time to remove them or replace them?
Early spring, maybe the month of April kind of thing. So.
I think that's good, Tom. The one thing I'd just like to add is with a black tube, because you get heat transfer there, you want to make sure you have an air gap. So the black tube's got to be bigger than those white tubes, because otherwise we'll get conduction from that sun, and we don't want that on the young tender bark. Air gap around it, a little bit bigger diameter for the black tube than a white tube.
Okay. Richard wants to know, how can you fold over the leaves of garlic plants without breaking them? And I'm not sure if he's talking about the scapes or not.
Yeah, I don't think we really want to break those leaves. We want to break down an onion until it's mature. We don't necessarily want to break down garlic till it's mature. But on some of the hardnecks, we've got this scape, which is a seed head, which really should be clipped at the base. You just use a scissors, and I don't think there's any point in breaking off or breaking down the leaves on a garlic plant.
And the scapes are delicious as well.
In gourmet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just weeding.
Convince
hands are
yourself of
dirty.
that.
I was just weeding garlic last night in the rain.
Good for
So
you.
yeah,
Good
and
for
I
you.
didn't break any of the leaves.
And you still have friends even
And I
after
still-
weeding garlic.
But the scapes aren't coming up yet.
Not yet. There's a few
are they?
early
Okay.
ones, but a couple more weeks I
Yeah.
should be covered with them.
Won't be
so.
long. Okay. Nancy from Babbitt has a crabapple tree with little holes encircling the tree about 3 feet up, and is wondering, might it be an insect or a woodpecker?
More than likely a woodpecker if there are those symmetric holes that we see a lot of, and probably the yellow-bellied sapsucker or something along that line. That's more than likely after an insect that's doing damage underneath the bark of the tree. So.
And if she sees one row, oftentimes we'll see additional. So it puts some kind of ventilated protection. You can use a window screen. You could use even a burlap if you're willing to take it off. But you just don't want repeated attacks, particularly the sapsucker. It does a little damage.
Ronnie from Ely has a snowball and a lilac bush. They're about 15 feet apart, and last year and again this year had curled leaves on both plants. Is that an issue? Do I need to do something with that?
I'm probably not enough information to probably answer that. But assuming maybe dealing with powdery mildew or something like that later in the season, and generally it's not a terminal or significantly negative impact on the bush over a short period of time.
How do you treat it if it is powdery mildew?
Well, you probably don't. It just depends on the season that we have, and the last couple of summers we've really had ideal conditions for powdery mildew. being very prevalent. So improving airflow, pruning it down or thinning it a little bit if it's too thick will help along that line. So, and look for, in the future, look for resistant varieties. So
We'll get back to more questions coming up, but we want to get on to our topic of seed saving. And Bob, you provided some information on types of seeds that we might be dealing with. So let's take a quick look at that.
We'll go through these quickly. People should be aware that they're open pollinated, hybrid, and heirloom. The open pollinated, just as the name implies, means that the pollen is being kicked around naturally. There's no human intervention. The wind is moving it, the insects are moving it, gravity's moving it. Hybrid, we've taken the pollen from one parent plant. We have physically crossed it to the female portion of a second parent plant. There's human intervention with these hybrids. An heirloom now just means it's an older plant, and there's always discussion, is that 100 years old, or is it perhaps just since the advent of modern agriculture about the Second World War. So it's older, but it's also always going to be open pollinated. So heirlooms are always open pollinated.
So if we're going to save seed, we want to use the open pollinated.
Save the open pollinated, otherwise you tend to regress back to the original parents with a hybrid, and they may not have the characteristics you're looking for. So the simplest thing is start open pollinated. We make that point here using mature and dry seeds for the most part. Most things you're going to be saving. There are a few that don't like to be too dried down, but for the most part. And in the tomato realm, we're going to talk a little later about flowers, but certainly in the vegetable realm, these four are real simple. The beans and peas, just let them dry on the plants. The peppers, make sure that they're mature. And green pepper should be red when it's mature. Green is green, and you want to make sure those seeds are mature. With tomatoes, they should be so ripe that you may not even want to eat them. They're getting soft. Strip the seed out with tomatoes. That's the one that's a little different. All the rest, we can just dry the seed down and save it. With tomatoes, put it in a jar, maybe a little water. You're going to get a gel that's going to ferment. Don't worry about that. 3-4 days or a week later, you take that fermented mess, it takes the gel off the seed, and then dry that seed down. And once you've got all the seeds dried, make sure you label them because they can look very similar. Label them, particularly in the variety. And again, don't look for hybrids, look for the open pollinated types. Store in a glass jar with an antidesiccant. Now that can be silica gel, get it from hobby shops, or it can be even a little pillow pack of dried powdered milk that'll suck some of that additional humidity out from around the seeds. Take the whole jar with the antidesiccant and put it in the refrigerator or even in the freezer.
Okay, excellent. Well, now we also want to take a look at some of the favorites of local gardeners who have reseeded flowers and wild plants.
The calendula, which is a self-seeding annual, makes a little seed pod. Also, like the hollyhock, the pink malva or the Zebrina malva mallow produce seed pods nicely. Bachelor buttons produce seed pods. My heliopsis in front. So there are a lot of them that will actually make a seed pod. We have the wild lupins that make nice seed pods, and all of these can be dried and saved. Whenever they are past bloom, and right now I am still deadheading to prevent things from going to seed to prolong their bloom time, but once we let them go, and it depends on weather, I would say I'm usually cutting my gardens down and preparing them for winter sometime in late September or early October.
A lot of these are seeds that I have, I go for walks and I collect seeds and then fling them about. This is where I seed things, and then if they work and get big enough, then I try to mix them in amongst the taller stuff. These closed gentian, we've had really good luck with seeds from that. It's hard to get, native plants for me anyway, to grow from seed, but we've had some luck. Those were all from seed. I got one of those red pods and flung the seeds up on the hill and forgot about them, and a couple years later I went back and I thought, oh, there's a lot of jack-in-the-pulpits back here.
Okay, those gardeners have had some good success with flowers. Sometimes it can be simple.
Yeah, and some of the examples that the different gardeners used are outstanding ways to really expand your garden and to utilize some of those things that are native in and around our gardens to add to our gardens. So perfect ways to do that. So.
And if we want to help them along a little, those seeds, rather than just collecting them and
Yeah, Vicky's
scattering them?
comment was so good. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And it's kind of nature's way. That's why it kicks so much seed out. Only a certain amount of it's actually going to germinate for you. So you can help it around a little bit by collecting. You got to break dormancy on these because they all have inhibitors in there, and you can put them in the fridge in a little damp sand for about 60 days, and that will actually break a lot of the dormancy of most of our natives, and that'll give them a jump start in the spring of the year or in a seeding bed. So you can help nature a little bit.
Yeah, and if folks aren't sure, they can look it up depending on the plant. Each one of them is going to have a little bit different requirements, so look it up online or give us a call, and we'll certainly try to help. So
Another flower that we know some gardeners have had great success with is poppies, and they create an almost countless amount of tiny little seeds. And those reseed on their own, or you can, again, take the pods and...
that's right.
Right, you can help out. So there's the wonderful thing is really this is a hobby gardening that can be very, very inexpensive. And you know, the nice thing about these natives that we're trying to reseed is that they're all pollinator friendly because they've still got complete flower parts. So I think that any activity like this is going to be beneficial in a lot of different ways.
Great. Those poppies are beautiful, but they really spread.
Yes, they can take over a garden.
So much of a good thing sometimes.
That's right.
Okay, all right. Okay, on to some more questions. Catherine from Washburn wants to know, how late can carrots be planted?
You know, you can actually go with carrots if you're willing to take a smaller root as a result, maybe until about even mid to the 3rd week in July. Then you just tell everybody that you could grow them bigger, but you're growing these as gourmet carrots.
That's right. That's right. And really, carrots are a great fall crop, as Bob mentioned, even late July and harvesting late into the season, well into October and even November.
And actually, a lot of the chefs are taking those small little carrots and they're lining them out with the sauce, and they're baking them that way rather than slicing them. So yeah, into July, certainly, mid-July.
Okay. Kelly from Cloquet has an azalea bush that had winter kill and frost damage. Buds are only partially opening and wants to know when and how to prune it.
Well, more than likely, it sounds like pretty significant damage if it's just barely opening or hasn't opened in many cases. What she can do, or Kelly can do, is wait and see what branches or if any of the buds do open and prune back depending on where that damage is. But you can do that pretty much any time now. So.
Okay.
Yeah, the azaleas are really glorious in our landscapes right now, the Northern Lights series and so forth. So yeah, they should be breaking flower at this point.
Okay. Jane from Barnes, Wisconsin wants to know, what climbing vines do well in shade, if any, and are there any ferns that do well in the sun?
Well, Dutchman's pipe, and we actually had a question about shade-tolerant vines last week. Dutchman's pipe, which is the Dicentra, same family as Bleeding Heart, is a good selection for a shady location for a vine. And really, depending on how much sun, a lot of sun on a location, most ferns don't like that and will die down early. So it's better to, if possible, to select ferns for shady locations and find some of the sun-loving stuff, especially in barns where, you know, summer's a little bit hotter than it is here in the Duluth area. So.
Okay.
At least partial shade, and sometimes you'll get just kind of a chartreuse. We lose a little bit of that deep green color with the ferns, but moist, particularly if it's going to be hot. Make sure you get plenty of moisture to it if you have a bright location.
Okay, this isn't a plant or garden question. Well, it's a garden question, but how do I get rid of mosquitoes without harming wildlife, especially where there's water in the ditches? Anyone want to try that one?
Drain the ditches.
Have them follow me out. I seem to be a magnet for
Are
it, for
you?
getting
Yes.
them out of people's properties. So.
You know, there aren't real good solutions. Maybe a vegetable oil. You want to kill the larvae that are there, and that might be a possibility. But yeah, you don't want to go to a general spray where you're going to non-discriminate against some of our more beneficial insects. So.
Yeah. Now,
Getting rid of the water and the larvae if you can.
Yeah, and if it's a small area, even just putting a couple drops of Dawn dish soap, which creates a surface on the top of the water that mosquitoes actually help. It helps suffocate the larvae. So.
Small amount lets that suds up
Yeah,
the water.
that's right. And not in ditches or anything like that. But you know, if you have a pond or a little area in your yard where you're concerned about just a few drops of dish soap. So.
Worth a try.
Yep.
Okay.
We're seeing some favorable work, actually, the Zika virus being carried by mosquitoes. I think we're going to actually see some predator mosquitoes be introduced and developed. I've seen some interesting work being done right now with that emphasis because of the human health concerns. Maybe they'll in the future be able to help us with our insect population as well.
Okay. All right. Well, tonight's tour takes us to the Iron Range, where feathered friends are part of the garden attractions.
I'm Bob Pulford.
And I'm Joanne Pulford, and we live in downtown Chisholm, and welcome to our gardens. I didn't know a thing about gardening, and I actually got plants from elderly people that had gardens around town, and it's been real nice. A lot of them have passed away, but when those plants bloom, I think of them. And sharing's really important because you have to thin things out anyway. I always put impatiens in here because it's shady and it tolerates a lot of shade. Heucheras seem to do fine, and of course lily of the valley ferns. The tiarellas will bloom. Sedum even grows in the shade. Lots of columbine, it grows anywhere and seeds out freely. Cleome, I prefer the pink. All of these. Our Aligularia, I like them for the texture that they give the garden. They look almost prehistoric. I like big plants, even though I have a small yard. My husband bought me the pond for my birthday.
Just thought it would be nice to have some sound in the backyard, and there's a lot of talk about water being a calming element.
We got all the slate from Evtac Mining with a permit. So we did all the slate work and everything. Those are a perennial geranium over here. There's one against that tree, but these are all perennial geraniums. One's purple and one's pink. I love lilies. Stargazer. These Turk's caps were beautiful. And I love that delphinium too. That's a beautiful delphinium. And they say delphiniums are fussy, but we really have pretty good luck with them, even with minimal light. In the fall, I cut literally everything right down to the dirt. It keeps bad bugs and powdery mildew, anything like that. And then I top dress the soil. Mix sea kelp and worm castings, earthworm castings, and sometimes bat guano. And I was studying pH of soil at the time. I don't like to use pesticides. We have a lot of animals, and we love our animals. We would feed the other birds, and they just started coming. And we realized that they weren't afraid of us because I was working out in the yard all the time. And they would march up the deck and into the house, try to get into the house to get Bob to come outside. They're beautiful colors, and we have names for a lot of them. Some people call it false sunflower. Coleuses and the sweet potato vine and the vinca vine really help me be able to decorate back here with potted plants because I'm so limited as to what will grow in the shade.
I think the deck is my favorite part.
I was going to say the same thing. I think it's because we sit there and we can look over everything and relax. And that's the first thing we do in the morning is come outside. We don't spend very much time in the house in summer.
Thanks to Joanne and Bob. That was a fun garden to visit.
Fantastic. Just shows you what you can do, and this idea of older plants carrying on the lifetime of another individual is a great idea.
Yeah.
And look what they've done
Great
in
stuff.
booming downtown Chisholm.
Chisholm, that's right. Only time for a couple questions. Sally from Holyoke is wanting to put her amaryllis out for the summer. How much sun does it need? Better to put it in the ground or leave it in a container?
She can leave it in the container, and certainly plenty of sun is a good thing. So.
And Marge from Duluth has a azalea with little green worms on the bushes. Can I treat that, and what can I do about it?
You can. It's more likely a soft fly. Usually it takes the leaves off, and then they will rebud, the azalea will. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. We're getting a little late in the season, but they'll come back.
All right.
And back up to that question on the amaranth.
Amaryllis.
Amaryllis, slowly, incrementally.
Slowly they'll burn down, sunburns, so you want to be careful. But then once you get going, they will get a lot of light. And then
Little
you
by
want
little, bring it out.
Yep.
frost sensitive, so we want to make sure they come in before we get that first fall frost.
Well, one of our very favorite flowers grows abundantly in the gardens of this week's Grow and Show. Very soon, the sweet smell of peonies will fill the air around Northland Gardens. These photos from Jane Lupaka of ESCO showed last summer's glorious blooms. Jane grows some 45 different varieties of peonies among her other plants and flowers. She anxiously awaits this year's bloom time, which should come in the next few weeks. One of the great things about peonies, says Jane, is they are not a favorite of our garden nemesis, the white-tailed deer. Please keep those garden photos coming in. You can send them to greatgardening@wdse.org or mail to 632 Niagara Court, Duluth. And be sure to check our website for all our Grow and Show photos. You'll find them on our Garden Galleries page. We have one calendar item to share for this Saturday, although there are more on our website, but a sale coming up from our friends at the St. Louis County Master Gardeners.
8 to noon at St. Lawrence Church up in Piedmont off Morris Thomas Road. It's going to be a great sale. Again, be there. Things will go kind of early for folks, but lots of information as well as lots of plants.
And lots more on our website and past episodes as well, because guess what? This is our last regular season episode. We want to thank you guys so much for being here all season long. I know I learned a lot, and I know you provided a lot of great information to all of our viewers out there. We really appreciate it. I want to thank our phone volunteers from the Carleton County Master Gardeners. We will be back with our fall harvest special on September 22nd. And finally, we want to say a huge thank you and a goodbye to our floor director, photographer, and editor, Judy Morris.
Judy,
come here, Judy.
For all her wonderful
Come
work
here, Judy.
here.
Come on. Come on. Hey. Oh, we love Judy.
Just having a party, yes. Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you to everyone for watching Great Gardening. And we want to thank you for calling in and for sending in your questions. And from all of us here, please enjoy the garden.